Good evening. NATO has been vigorously defending its bombing campaign in the Balkans despite new accusations of a blunder that's killed more than a dozen civilians. The Serbs say 2 missiles hit a sanatorium and an old people's home. 17 bodies are said to have been recovered. NATO's admitted attacking a barracks in the same town, Surdulica, but said it couldn't confirm the civilian casualties. John Simpson reports from Belgrade. His report's been seen but not changed by the Serb authorities.
The pleasant country town of Surdulica has now suffered twice in little over a month from stray bombs. This time they hit an old people's home. Nearby, in the wooded grounds, was a sanitarium. Between the 2 buildings, 17 people are thought to have died. The bodies were still lying around when the Western camera teams arrived. Incidents like this enable the government here to claim that NATO is now intentionally targeting civilians, and most people here seem to believe that. Scarcely 12 hours earlier, the bridge outside the little town of Varvarin in central Serbia was hit. It was market day, and Varvarin was busy. The first airstrike knocked the bridge down. Then came the real disaster. As people gathered to help the relatively few victims of the first attack, more bombs struck 10 minutes later. The bridge is strategically important and its destruction is significant. So is the death of 11 people in this small town. Nearby, an old lady looks down from her wrecked block of flats. It was full of refugees from one of President Milosevic's earlier wars. Her son and she were among them. He's already been taken to hospital. Now the ambulance has come back for her. Such incidents make powerful propaganda for President Milosevic. At present, he seems to be moving slowly closer to a peace deal, but he's still refusing to accept NATO's basic demands. Rather than cave in totally, he might even prefer to face a ground war. And so the daily destruction continues. This is one of today's hits in Kosovo. NATO's mistakes are not diminishing, yet if Mr. Milosevic thought that civilian casualties would force NATO to give up its campaign, it hasn't happened. John Simpson, BBC News, Belgrade.
And there have been more reports of NATO hitting civilian targets in Serbia tonight. The Yugoslav state news agency says at least 10 people were killed when a block of flats was hit in the southern town of Novi Pazar. Earlier, NATO's spokesman Jamie Shea had defended the alliance's record of civilian casualties during the campaign, comparing it to the many thousands who've suffered from Serb violence in Kosovo.
I've got some civilian casualty figures for you this afternoon. 550,000 internally displaced persons in Kosovo, 883,500 refugees in neighbouring countries, 75% of which are women and children. That is, I think, the vital casualty statistics as far as NATO is concerned, and that is the generation of Milosevic's bullets, not NATO's bombs.
Well, the BBC's Hugh Schofield is at NATO headquarters in Brussels. Hugh, NATO seems to have decided to stop apologising when it makes mistakes and kills civilians.
Yes, there has been a hardening of the tone. There's been something of the steely gaze out of NATO today. Privately, I would say some officials do concede that there have been blunders. This bridge, for example, yesterday they're saying that pilots are normally under instructions to abort missions when they can see civilians near a target area. That didn't happen. There must have been a blunder. Equally, the evidence now seems irrefutable that missiles have gone astray. They're blunders. But publicly, of course, there is this line now, unrepentant, unapologetic, and I get the sense that it's come from high up. The line seems to be that to apologise now would be to send out the wrong kind of signals, particularly when they get the sense that President Milosevic might be wavering. I think they feel that to apologise would to sound embarrassed, to sound shifty, to sound guilty. Those aren't sentiments that they want to feel. They want to feel this is a just war.
We're joined on the line now by Zoran Chusalic, who is director of television in the nearby town of Kachac. Mr. Chusalic, can you tell us what happened?
Hello. About the midnight, 5 missiles, as far as I know in this moment, 5 missiles hit this home for elderly people and sanatorium and special hospital. And 11 people died until this moment. Rescue teams are working hardly to find someone because these buildings are badly damaged all. And eyewitnesses reports, and one of them is the editor-in-chief of local radio station in nearby Vranje. He said all day long, yesterday and night, they heard NATO airplanes. They hit about 35 missiles around the Surdulica area. And, you know, the comments are there. If NATO are going to press Mr. Milosevic like this, it's totally wrong way.
Jamie Shea of NATO is on the line from Brussels, and you have what Mike Williams was calling the PR problem, Mr. Shea. What's your comment on this bombing of an old people's home?
Well, certainly we don't have any information at the moment that NATO was responsible for that. I want to make it clear, whenever we have these reports, as you know, we do a thorough investigation, and if it was us, we own up quickly and in full transparency. And I can tell you that last night NATO aircraft did attack an ammunition storage depot and a barracks at Surdulica, but the information I have at the moment is both those targets were accurately hit, and I don't have any information at the moment of damage to any civilians or civilian facilities, but we're going to continue to check. But I believe that our record of accuracy remains a good one, given the number of targets that we've been going after in this campaign, given the number of missions that we've flown. We're still talking about a tiny fraction of 1% of missiles or bombs which have gone off target.
Well, off target and with civilian casualties doesn't help NATO's cause. There was also the convoy in Kosovo, which contained several journalists. The driver was killed, apparently, and 2 journalists, including one from the Times, injured. Was that a NATO bit of collateral damage?
Well, again, I think we shouldn't rush to over-hasty judgments in these matters. There's a lot of fighting going on in Kosovo at the moment. Kosovo is a dangerous place for anybody to be travelling around in a car, and not simply, of course, because of the NATO operations. There's fighting, intensive fighting going on between the Yugoslav armed forces and the Kosovo Liberation Army, and we've been looking at this incident in the car all night, and I have to tell you that so far we have nothing that links us to that particular incident. We'll continue to look at it, but again, let's not say that because NATO may be responsible in one instance, then automatically we jump to the conclusion that it's responsible for every other. We cannot obviously guarantee the security of journalists travelling by car in Kosovo.